government thinks of you. This is absolutely critical to understand what the government thinks of you. Computer systems being a little crazy, so bear with me. This is a mainstream news article, and I'm reading it through Yahoo News. And the article is written by Ari Perliger, who is the Director of Security Studies and a Professor of Criminology and Justice, University of Massachusetts, Lowell. Okay, and the title of the article is Police Soldiers Bring Lethal Skill to Militia Campaigns Against the U.S. Government. Now, I want to remind everyone that the U.S. government is not the United States of America. The U.S. government is a corporate body in Washington, D.C. I want to ask you this one question. Is the U.S. government helping you, helping the country, helping all the people, or is the U.S. government helping itself to more power, more taxes, more control, more demands upon us? As in taking our rights and our money. Understand the government, the U.S. government, is not representative of the 50 states, and it's not representing the people. It's representing its own interests. Now, having laid that groundwork, you will now understand why they are saying and doing the things they're doing. So this article is pretty lengthy, and I'll read some excerpts from it that I find particularly of interest for us. The government is preparing for war against the people. They've already prepared for war against the unvaxxed. They're testing these plans in countries like New Zealand and Australia and Canada. So thousands of police officers and soldiers, this is the article, people professionally trained in the use of violence and familiar with military protocols are part of an extremist effort to undermine this Washington, D.C. government and subvert the democratic process. You mean subverting a democratic process like fixing an election or undermining the Constitution, which controls the U.S. government? Yeah, I think that we see the hypocrisy and the violence inherent in the system. So, this guy quotes an investigative report coming from The Atlantic, which is a left-wing douchebag rag, and said that, the Oath Keepers, one of several far-right and white supremacist militias, 6 to 10% of those Oath Keepers, folks, these bad guys, are current police officers or military members. Okay, and another significant portion of the groups, all of these right-wing militias out here, folks, including the Oath Keepers, are retired military and retired law enforcement. So they're calling the Oath Keepers now a hate group in this article, and it claimed an improbable 30,000 members. I don't believe that's an improbable number. There are a number of people out here who would be Oath Keepers if there was a local chapter. And it's about keeping an oath to the Constitution. There is, to my knowledge, no secret oath to the Ku Klux Klan or the Aryan Brotherhood. But that's what this article is not for you or me. This article is to teach the common plebe, the normies, the vanillas out here, to keep them scared of what's going on. So you need to understand that, folks, right? Now, let's understand the use of the term far right, because they're the far left tyrannical. They want you to believe that there's some far right out here. No, the far left government has an enemy, and it's called freedom. Freedom. So I don't believe that I or anyone else are far right. I believe we're right down the middle. Fair, just, lawful citizens. We have rules. We want law and order. We want justice for ourselves and justice for those in high power who fail their oaths and fail to follow the law. We want equality, not equity. We are not far right. We are right down the middle, fair and honest. But that's not how they need to present us. Remember, this is a communo-fascist, super left-wing article, writer, bullshit mainstream story designed to scare people. Now, again, this is from the article. The militia movement is a militarized stream of the American far right. Its members promote an ideology that undermines the authority and legitimacy of the federal government, and they stockpile weapons. See, once again, we don't undermine the authority of the federal government. We define it according to the rules called the Constitution. We don't undermine the legitimacy of the federal government. We confine the legitimacy of the government to only those special granted powers given to them by the people and delineated in the Constitution. But see, they believe their authority and their legitimacy is what they say it is at any given moment. That's the United States government. They believe their power is all-encompassing, has no limitations, and can be used to solve whatever problem they find or create. Now, back to the article. When militia members have a professional background with the military or police, it enhances the ability of these groups to execute sophisticated and successful operations. And it helps them convey a patriotic image, right? See, I'm borrowing the credibility of the military when I wear this shirt and bring you a message of freedom and liberty, lawful behavior. What am I promoting? I am promoting on this channel preparedness for uncertain times where the government screws things up. And who is in charge of the country? The governments. Federal, state, local. Those are the people in charge of everything, from infrastructure to making sure the roads and highways are good. That's infrastructure. To everything. I don't get to make those decisions. There is no civilian body that makes those decisions. It's all government decisions. Anyways, yeah, we have a patriotic image. That's great. Now, they want to call back to 1923 in this article in order to give credibility to their claim that white supremacists are in the police and in the military, and refer to an episode in Indiana in 1923, folks, over 100 years ago, that there was an unlawful deportation of Black Americans from this town. That's the best they've got, folks. Don't bother thinking about all of the experiments the U.S. government did on Blacks in the South in the 30s, much more recent history in 40s and 50s, where they conducted medical experiments and infected Blacks with syphilis and who knows what else. But don't listen, don't believe that history about the U.S. government and how it doesn't give a shit and experiments on people. Don't listen to how the United States government rounded up Japanese Americans, that is, Americans of Japanese descent, who were not only legally, lawfully migrated and naturalized, but also natural-born Americans of Japanese descent were put in prison camps. That's the U.S. government. Don't you know, I mean, they want to paint you, paint me, paint patriots as bad people, call us far-right extremists, while they're the ones who execute military, law enforcement, and medical experiments on minorities here in this country, as well as us whiteys. Unbelievable. Now, they call us in this article skilled insurrectionists, when members of far-right groups are also professionals sworn to protect the nation and their communities, and makes these groups seem more legitimate. Of course it does, because we take an oath and believe in it. Authorities may be less likely to treat them as domestic security threats, a categorization that would limit their access to firearms and sensitive locations. Yet military and police members actually make American militias more effective, according to my research on the violent practices of the American far right. I want to end by discussing this, then I'm going to go into my thoughts and how this plays out. when shit hits the fan, goes Mad Max in this country, and it is coming. So it says these groups seem more legitimate. Folks, the most legitimate people that I can think of in government are the ones that are local, that I have the most access to. State officials, I have less access, and they seem less legitimate. DC officials, elected representatives, they are aloof. They are untouchable, and therefore they're less legitimate to me because they don't represent me very well at all, do they? How about you? Do you feel you're being represented by all of Washington, D.C., by the bureaucracy? I doubt it. Now, authorities may be less likely to treat them, police and military, as domestic security threats. This is quite the opposite. We are the ones that they are looking at the hardest. Ex-military, ex-police, current military, current police. They're busy kicking people out of the military right now for being extremists, and then using their Jim Jones juice as a way to effectively say, join us and take the Kool-Aid, or get out and have your life potentially hardened or ruined by it. Now, so that is a lie right there. Less likely to treat them. Now, I'll tell you, the authorities, meaning government bureaucrats, elected officials at the federal level, elected officials in blue states and in blue cities, they are the ones, folks, who are the authorities. The police guys in cars running around my neighborhood, the sheriff's deputies, I should say, they're not authorities to me. They are peace officers. These peace officers that I see, yeah, they'll look at me and treat me not like a bad guy, but they'll understand I'm a veteran and an American who has sworn an oath, who is not a criminal, who has no criminal record. And yeah, they'll treat me with respect because of those things. Authorities in government, as I previously discussed, no way. They won't treat me with any respect, right? They will treat me as a domestic security threat, and they already are. This thinking, this idea, these concepts have been around a long time, folks, since Barack Obama. Now, I'm going to agree. The military and police members make American militias more effective. True. Now, and then he says, according to my research on the violent practices of the American far right. What violent practices? The biggest thing they have, folks, is January 6th, which is a farce. People are being charged with criminal trespass. And that's about the extent of it. No insurrection. There were no firearms used. It's a horseshit story. And they know it, folks. They know it. When militias recruit professionals, they are better at waging their radical crusade. Their radical crusade for freedom. Folks, this is a mainstream media source I just read from. Meaning it is sent out to all media outlets, and they can report on it as they see fit. They can use excerpts, they can print the whole thing, etc. What they're doing is they're trying to tie, or they are tying, police and military to white supremacist, radical, fake terror groups. That's the narrative they have pushed, and they're going to continue to push into the future as things get worse and worse and worse. But folks, current and retired police and military included, we are all seen as this threat. In other words, the government is going to need a boogeyman, a bad guy, to fight domestically. We used to fight real bad guys, then we started fighting manufactured bad guys, and now we don't fight overseas. Now the fight is coming domestic, folks. Domestic. It's come full circle. Our country started with a big domestic fight called the American Revolution. And we kicked out the tyrants, and we established a Republican form of government. A republic, not a democracy. And 200 plus years later, we're right back at the beginning again with domestic violent extremists. Only this time, it's the same. It's those in charge, like King George was in charge and his governors, claiming we were the terrorists and we ended up fighting them. Now, we ex-military, current military, ex-law enforcement, current law enforcement are seen as the threat, since we have the experience at organizing structures, training, and carrying out complex plans, operations. So that's what makes us so threatening, right? Additionally, we, the forenamed, we understand government institutional and bureaucratic weaknesses, and we know how to quickly improvise to thwart their countermeasures. They are slow to learn, slow to plan, and slow to respond to field conditions. In other words, unlike us out here, us grunts, if you will, in the field, who improvise, adapt, overcome, plan on the fly, that's improvisation. They can't do that, right? And we'll get into why. They will demand centralized decisions. That's why, and centralized control. As control freaks themselves, their field commanders will be handicapped because they won't be allowed to make decisions in the field the way these radical militia forces would, who have been trained in the military and trained in the police to do such things, right? This centralized command structure in DC will not trust their field officers to act independently in fulfilling their mission objectives, so they will be naturally handicapped. Furthermore, government will fear and suffer from continuous defections of their police and their military personnel to the Free America Forces, aka, as the white supremacist rebels of all colors, right? We're the rebels of all colors, even though we're white supremacists. They're going to have massive defections because people that work for the government, either as police, sheriffs, or as military or National Guard, they know that the government hates us and we are them. We are just a more mature and retired group of people who said, you know what, we've seen enough. These younger guys, that's who they'll recruit, young men mostly, into the military to come fight us. And because they don't have the experience, and because the control freaks in DC won't give up their authority, they will be naturally handicapped. Now, government personnel, these same guys, these young guys, right? They're going to understand they are disposable pawns and their futures are limited to being tools. And if they were to survive serving their country, which has sent them to fight against these future rebels, they realize that once they have been discharged from service, fulfilled their obligation, they know. They absolutely know that they are going to be looked at as the same threat as we are. Retired military personnel, retired law enforcement. In other words, they'll be the enemy. They'll need to go to special deprogramming, reprogramming school to convince them that everything they know is wrong, that anything they saw is a lie, and that everything the government says and teaches them from that moment on, that they need to be good, passive, obedient slaves, or they get to go to jail, right? In other words, fear will be used on the military and police, and threats against their families will keep them in line as long as they possibly can, right? Internal arrests and investigation of civilians, police, and military on their side will ensure a scared population and military. And it'll also feed into discontent and defections. But folks, this is usual for tyrannical government. And history does show how government used to kidnap people for naval service and military service. It's called conscripting. Anyways, it's usual for tyrannical government to use murder and threats to keep men in line. That is, until those men have the opportunity to defect in a more safe manner. In other words, they'll get their families taken care of as best they can, get them over to the other side, and then they defect, folks. Government will keep long-term goals, plans, and objectives and other key intelligence from their mid and lower ranks for fear of defections and this intelligence, this information being brought over to the side of, shall we say, free rebels, patriots, right? Keeping these goals, plans, etc., away from their mid and lower ranks, right, creates more incompetence, or rather does not promote competence. It creates more distrust for field grade officers and conscripts. In other words, they don't want to give any information to the lower ranking people because those are the ones who are defecting, right? The result of all of this, folks, is going to be a protracted, difficult conflict between freedom factions and tyrannical scum. Fascist contractors are going to benefit from sales of arms, so they're not going to mind. They're going to make their money. War profiteering. Once war profiteering was made lawful again, or legal rather, we've been in a state of continuous war, folks. Anyways, let's move on. Government will keep people scared to death of the unvaxxed and scared to death of the white supremacists of all colors. Remember, you can be black and be a white supremacist. You can be Hispanic and be a white supremacist. You can be Asian and be a white supremacist. All you have to do is be claimed to be the enemy of the state, and you are a white supremacist. You're a threat, right? So government will keep people scared to death. And government believes it will win despite history giving great examples of despotic, tyrannical governments screwing their people over, using their military as disposable pawns, and same with their police, ultimately treating them like criminals and arresting them or killing them after their useful service is done, right? So despite Korea, Vietnam, Soviet Afghanistan, US Afghanistan, and the American Revolution, all those results, folks, tyrants never learn. All they understand is violence. They want their power. They want to keep their power. They want more power and authority. And that's why they are running over the top, roughshod, and crapping on our Constitution and ignoring the Declaration of Independence and shredding the Bill of Rights. That's what the government is doing. And then when we get upset, when we point it out, when we say stop that, the federal government says, why are you saying such things? You must be a white supremacist, domestic terrorist, violent organization member. No, I'm just an American, law-abiding, non-violent, non-criminal, who wants to be free to enjoy the fruits of life, love, liberty, pursuit of happiness, etc., to be free to move about, to make an income, to engage or not engage with others in business and personal life. I want my freedom. I want freedom for everyone around me, because it's not just for me, it's for everybody. And they can make choices about their life. And right now, we are all in a position to make a choice about what is happening. Do you see it as there's domestic violent extremists and these right-wing terror groups that commit acts of violence that I haven't seen yet? I see Antifa, I see BLM, I see Black Bloc, I see all of these violent groups out here promising more violence, committing acts of terror, attacking government institutions, police and law enforcement, and getting away with it, and being encouraged by politicians all the way up to and including the current vice president, who bailed them out of jail literally, and the current president, Xi Biden, who wouldn't condemn their actions. In our own country, we have groups committing violence against all this, and our own government would not condemn it. We're in the 1930s Nazi Soviet era style takeover of America. I am free currently to say such things, and I'm more than glad to do so, because we need to be prepared, folks, mentally. You need food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. I want you to share this video with others so they understand where we're at, so they understand what the media, the mainstream media is telling us through articles like this one from Ari the douchebag, conditioning the American people to not trust themselves and their own thoughts, to not trust the military, and to not trust the police. Well, they want the police to enforce their law, but they don't want us to trust the police because they're probably KKK members. They're probably white supremacists. They're probably anti-government militia members. It's funny how policemen can protect and serve the people through government employment, but they're not to be trusted. But we better do what they say. But they're racists and murderers. But you better do what the police say. See how the government uses them and they play both sides? They gaslight us with all of their bullshit, lying to us to our faces. That's how they operate, folks. They will not stop. They cannot be reasoned with. Tyrants never quit. And the only thing they understand is that which they employ against their opponents. What do they employ against you and me? Violence. The threat of violence and more violence. That is all they understand, folks. It will become more apparent in time. Depriving you, your family, your neighborhood, your community, your city of food, water, electricity is a form of violence, much like a blockade in Boston Harbor to stop shipments arriving was an act of violence against those shippers and against the people by denying them those things they needed. And what do we need? Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, right? All those things. The government is going to continue to deny us as punishment and to make sure that we are weaker. At the same time, it's going to create more support for opposition against the government. In other words, it's forcing people to choose sides. A small, teeny 3% militia force is going to be 20%. This little radical dipshit group of 5% of Democrats, who are this radical communist bunch, are going to be scared to death by this report and others. And so that group is going to grow to all of the Democrats who will support government because they are cowards, they are intellectual ding-dongs, they are not free thinkers, they are followers. And they will follow the government and be scared. It's going to get nasty, folks. Is this going to happen next week? I doubt it. Next year? I doubt it. But it's possible. Certainly in our near future as they bring the system down. The only reason I say I can't say it's going to be next year is they have been marvelous, the government and its institutions, at kicking the can down the road with regard to the economic system, the economy, the real economy, the Wall Street investment economy, the banking syndicate that they've kept afloat by printing money. They've managed to kick it down the road and keep us believing that, oh, things are pretty normal. Things are not fucking normal, folks. It's far from it. Far from it, and it's going to get worse. Right now, all we're doing is pretending. We're pretending that the government works for us, and we're pretending that we like government. And we in America are pretending everything is just fine. And we're pretending that we can drive down the street and there's no problems. We're pretending, folks, that this is America, and it is not. We're pretending, though, and I am not going to go to jail because somebody thinks that me and you and everyone else are bad guys because at one point you served in the military. And because you don't support and kiss Joe Biden's ass, you must be a terrorist. Because you don't support and kiss the ass of Kamala Harris, you must be a white supremacist. It's all lies, propaganda, bullshit. It's 1984 combined with Brave New World, folks. Aldous Huxley's book, George Orwell's book. They're combining technological terror with just over-the-top despotic tyranny. That's what we have now. They've got technology, communications, medicine, computers. They've got it all, folks, and they're going to try using it to own us all. So, do you want to get prepared? Do you want to make sure that you can get through harder times with more ease and comfort than you otherwise would be? I recommend it. It's not going to be easy or fun either way, but I would rather be suffering with a half full belly of food than to be suffering through all the bullshit that's coming with only the amount of food the government gives me on a daily basis. You guys be cool. Understand what's coming. Think about this for yourself. Make your own decisions. Are the ex-military the bad guys? Are we bad? All of us tax-paying people? Are retired police officers bad? Are current police officers bad? Which ones are bad and why, and where are they? Which ones are good and why are they good and where are they? What about current military? Are they bad or good? If they're bad, why are they bad? If they're good, why are they good? And which ones are they and where are they at? And as this all falls apart, as they continue to push and shove their indoctrination into the military, this anti-freedom, anti-American, anti-straight military program, they're going to cause further schism. They're going to have a bunch of emasculated, ignorant, weak members in the military in the next few years. And the strength will leave it. And the government sees you and I as the strength. Right? How strong, how much courage, how much strength does it take to lay down and bend the knee and cower before the government and not think about anything they say except to be obedient? And how strong and courageous are people to listen to what the government says, think about it for themselves, come to their own conclusions, and if they decide to reject it and object to their demands, those are stronger people, are they not? That's who we are as proud, free Americans who were taught and raised that government is to be limited and that we are to question government and authority and check it against the Constitution and our own belief systems, and then to object and refuse to obey all things unconstitutional. That was the America that I lived in, folks. It's the America I want to keep, one where we're free. What do you want? Choice is yours. I'm not telling you how to think. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just telling you it's going to get nasty. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi. Godspeed.